Hello. Thank you for taking the time and welcome. I'm gonna pull some cards and tap into this moon and see what it's got to offer. I already feel quite a bit. But happy full moon. Happy full moon in Taurus specifically. I do have a soft spot in my heart for Taurian natures. Shout out to the homies. And shout out to the birthday homies. Full moon in Taurus with Uranus, interestingly enough. Uranus, quite comfortable in Taurus for some time now. I mean, I guess I wouldn't call it comfortable, but it's been there for some time. Mars is in Leo. I did say something about that in the last video. I can't necessarily remember what, but we're going to talk about what I'm saying now. Venus is in Capricorn, which also soft spot, natural placement for me. And what what all of this is squaring. This full moon in Taurus and Uranus is ironic because as grounding of a sound as a sign as it can be, I don't think it's been particularly grounding in with Uranus as far as collective advancements goes. I think it's been a lot of questioning. And Leo Mars is much more confident in its capacity to question. But I do feel like it's generally more judgmental of this Sun in Scorpio. There's opposition for sure, but I feel like there's, it's like don't talk about Bruno, like these hidden things or these secret things or like shameful things that are supposed to go under the radar or supposed to go unnoticed or supposed to go under the rug, but we're having a harder time doing that. With Venus in Capricorn, I feel like though people are maybe taking that to be more material, financial, prosperous, seeking stability in the form of wealth, and often coming with lots of sacrifice. I do think, and Leo Mars sort of really driving into that. I do think you don't have to hurt yourself to see value in yourself. You don't have to sacrifice to hold value or love. You don't have to hurt yourself to notice progress in these patterns. I feel like in a roundabout way that also means gratitude, and how much that can often create reverberations and exponential growth. There's a stability to the showiness that Mars in Leo wants. Because it has confidence, so speak out, absolutely, but sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and sometimes silence is necessary. The moon in Taurus, also squaring Saturn, Neptune, Pisces, and I think that leads to some invocations in dreaming, but dreaming in small steps and small fixes. There's a writer who actually talks a lot about how his work isn't fictional, it's actually visions of, maybe not visions, meditations, I don't know what he calls them, of things he's seen, things he's seen in other timelines, witnessing of the quarks, if you will. And I think that's very applicable to everything. As history changes, oftentimes we play with this idea and fancy this idea of, if I were to go back in time and change this one small thing. I have a litmus test actually for this, and what it often is very telling of, that good people who think they're good people are often mistaken, because they failed to acknowledge that they could do any wrong. My point was, though, this writer, the writer of The Man in the High Castle, which is also a show, a great show. And after having watched the show and then finding all of this out, it makes so much sense, because it's far too real to have just been fictional or made up. And in those ways, it's small drops and their ripple effects in history, and the ways in which that we can apply that to ourselves. you know, small drops in the glass of memory and its ripple effects, and its dilution effects, even that we plant into our memory. And in a lot of ways, more often than not, it's in a negative sense where, you know, somebody told you never to sing, so you never sang, and now find yourself missing that. Or conversely, and I know I've talked about this before, but in psychology, you know, things like lateral eye movement or what have you, they do place you back in those memories so that you can sort of reframe them and reprogram them in your synapse, um, which is essentially the same thing. You're going back in time to, you know, change one little thing and hopefully have an impactful outcome to, you know, redirect in a more stable or positive or, you know, loving uh, tendency tendency to the pattern. And that is perhaps where we can really harbor stability rather than uh, the gamble that this capitalistic game is. Uh, and I say that also having an affinity toward both. um, let's see. Mercury in Sagittarius, which is also, I think, big ideas. Um, big ideas, potentially logical leaps. However, inductive reasoning, inductive rhetoric, you know, that's not necessarily a logical leap. There's evidence. Um, and there's evidence to suggest and to prove, should you be able to put the puzzle together. However, you can also find yourself in logical leaps. And that is something to be wary of. It's funny because I can relate to that in the way people are like, keep your head out of the clouds, Blair. And and then they don't say that so much when it comes true. um, it's quite funny. Um, my litmus test for people, and I've heard this often actually, so it's not mine. But I enjoyed what I would notice when I would ask people. But was if you could go back in time and change, you know, one thing for, you know, the betterment of the present day, change one thing in history. I feel like most often people say, maybe like 8 times out of 10, people would say they would go back in time to kill Hitler. Um, and there's a comedy special by David Cross where he sort of has this similar premise, and throws it back at you to sort of show you your hypocrisy, on what is the proper time. If that changes history, let's do one better. Go back in time and kill Jesus. What's the proper time then to kill Jesus that would make you still a good person? Do you drown him as a baby? Do you, you know, knock him on the back of the head as a teenager when he's not noticing? You know, do you catch him off guard? Um, and realistically, those are more indicative of cycles of trauma. Those would probably cause cataclysmic events, even more so than what we have already. Um, and when I sat and thought about it a ton, I thought jokingly, what if somebody just told Hitler his art was moving, you know? Um, or even if it was terrible, I don't actually know what his art looks like. Uh, you know, never stop trying or something. Um, what impact could that have had? You know, that's the way they say bullying leads to school shooters. I don't know what of that will get flagged. Uh, but ultimately, what we assume is the right thing to do is also often the programmed thing to do. And in a world of brainwashing, how do you find your north node? How do you find your internal compass? How do you find your magnetic pole? Um, and this will also be very important for this full moon because Pluto in Capricorn will take all of this forward as it moves, because I believe this is the last full moon where it stays in Capricorn. I don't know. I heard something about that. But Pluto in Capricorn is cultivating long-term stability, long-term ideology. Mercury and Sagittarius are also getting into this. However, Aries is the north node, and Aries has Chiron, and I think that may want to hold on to some baggage, that may want to move forward for revenge. And that's also a very revolutionary concept, you know, is, and unfortunately, revenge is often the thing where people are willing to sacrifice themselves for a cause. And that is not what it ought to be motivated. Well, that's not what's motivating anybody now. Um, that's demotivating everybody now. So what would it look like for you to dive so deeply into something? Uh, not that it is a sacrifice to yourself, but that it becomes your cause. That's the thing about revenge. You don't need to sacrifice yourself, but that is ultimately the path chosen when you choose anger and you choose revenge and you choose hate and you choose uh, to be led by abuse to become the abuser. Um, and what would a world look like if that? What would your world look like if that were not the case? Um, and if that became the new pattern. And that's very much also why I bring up the man in the high castle, because there's so many possibilities and conversations and addressings to patterns that are able to be acknowledged because this person could imagine or see, maybe not imagine it, but see a world outside of this one, a world outside, a possibility outside of this one. Which ultimately, I think, for as much as people tout science like it's their new religion, the scientific method, and boil it down to they boil down the scientific method to justify their own, means to an end. The scientific method was also always to question everything until you had an answer. And even when you had an answer, questioned the variability of that. So your research was essentially never done. And I don't think that that is the science that we know today, or is the science that is touted um, with, ego and condemnation. Um, don't let the trauma lead you. Uh, Lead it. Think like The Walking Dead. You're not the zombies aren't leading you. They're being like Michonne's character. They're not leading her. She's also leading them. Regardless of where they stand. It's been a while since I've seen that show. You can turn the page without forgetting. You can move forward. With healing, and without uh, living in the misery of your own hell. You can move forward. You can turn the page without forgetting who you are, without forgetting how you came to be and how you came to be here. And that's something that I think the very positive bias to all of this is, uh, this square Saturn, these small fixes, this full moon Taurus, this Uranus, um, is understanding that you don't have to hurt yourself to have value. You don't have to hurt yourself to be able to see your progress. And that's something I've had little spurts of too, is just like, oh wow. And just like that, it feels different. It feels easier. It feels natural. It feels like less of an imposter syndrome. It feels less taxing. That's not to say things like stage fright really ever go away, but you do get something else out of it. Um, and that's, even less fun things than stage fright. And something I was talking about with a friend recently with depression, it's not that, we've cured it and we'll never see it again, but it is that we have all of these amazing tools to be able to never really even let it uh, physically hurt us the way that it used to. Now we kind of not necessarily know better, but know what it's asking for, and know, it's not that the baby's crying because it hates you and it wants you not to sleep. It's because it doesn't know how to communicate and it is trying to communicate something. Our depression is very much that as well, or any of our feelings. They're cries for attention or help or need in some sort. The ways our bodies even tell us that we're hungry or thirsty. However, there is the phenomenon of misdirection and gaslighting in the societal program that is designed to lead you away from those notions. Um, and that is why I think this Venus Capricorn ought to be investigated, because it is quite misunderstood. There's something called, what is it, alexithymia? Um, and it's essentially being gaslit for so long that you stop to connect your needs and the way you react to them, or stop to believe your reactions to them. If you grow up in an abusive household and they always tell you you're not crying, you have no reason to cry, why are you crying, or you're not hungry, you're not starving, when you actually are really hungry and your little body and little brain doesn't know the difference, your poor nervous system is just freaking the fuck out. It starts to create this disconnect in the conversation. They're speaking different languages they're unable to hear. And this is, I think, something that we see a lot of in day-to-day contact with people that aren't listening, that don't hear you, that misunderstand you, as clear as you may try to be. That's the endless cycle of Facebook arguments and Reddit arguments and man versus bear arguments, because they just they perpetuate the cycle. They perpetuate the very cycle that they deny, ironically. Um, and ironically, we do these things, we deny existence to the very things that are real, and then beg for proof for the things that are in front of our faces. Um, it's quite an interesting cognitive dissonance, but it does not have to be. I think Taurus is very aware of alignment and of its if it's an earth sign, its communication with its surroundings, with its earth, with its bodily resonance. You might often hear that Taurian people have very strong sort of upper statures, or strong throats, or strong jaws, or strong shoulders, strong frames, and that's very much because in order to have all of this resonant information, you also have to have a strong output, a strong carrier, and a strong output. So where are resources where we're feeling overwhelmed? If we are overwhelmed, how are we our resources also? How are And I've said this in light of everything with the election. Um, we've done so much more with so much less. And at the end of the day, you are a resource for your community. You have been up until this point, in some way, shape, or form. Whether or not that is obvious to you, investigate and then accentuate it. That's very much what this Leo Mars wants you to do. It doesn't want you to try too hard. Don't overstep. Not overstep. Don't get too big for your britches, I guess. Don't leap before you can think. But also, what an incredible time to understand yourself and trust that you have something to offer. And again, that Venus in Capricorn, understanding your value, dear. All right, I'll stop rambling and I will pull cards because I talk a bit, quite a bit. There's just so much going on, man. All right. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Okay, 100%. That was very pleasurable. If you've ever heard of lymph node drainage, you should find out those spots and learn how to incorporate that into your shower routine, into your massage routine, into your before bed routine, what have you. because I did very much get this sensation of um, sort of elevation and weightlessness, ironically, but um, but I only get that when I'm very connected, you know, and or you know I only get that weightlessness when I'm very meditative and very connected and very you know into the core of the earth. Um, and I felt all of that pressure in specific lymph node joints, even in joints that are not accessible. And that makes me think that the key to, or one of the keys to fully accessing this Pluto Capricorn in light of this moon, um, so that this Aries North Node in Chiron do not hold on to baggage, is to access all of these reservoir points of memory and emotional memory and experiential memory and cleanse them. Because that will take stuff that is not useful and release it, feed it to the earth, give it to the spirits. I don't know. And things that are relevant or are common or are familiar will like categorize with each other. Like stuff that doesn't have like molecules will dissipate, and stuff that does have like molecules will condense. Like multiple sets of data points or like multiple sets of information like categorized. Does that make sense? Um, Programs. But I very much also had this vision of all of those points connected like waterfalls and flowing throughout. And that is something that also needs to be had because there are a lot of breaks, there are a lot of coagulations, there are a lot of separations in energy or dams in energy. It very literally, this is also showing up in the United States because dams along a specific, uh, not the Illinois River. It's another fucking river. I can't remember the name of it though. But dams are breaking down. Um, our city's flooding all the freaking time because its own digestive system doesn't know how to handle all the water that it siphons off from everybody else. But I digress. You see my point. You get my point. Da 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 da. Ooh, lovely, wonderful. Ooh, lovely, wonderful. This page of swords is a G, bottom of the deck. Very calm, very cool, very collected despite the chaos. Very much listening to the wind, very much hearing voices on the wind, very much led by the wind. Whether that be, opening up your mind to the possibility of signs, symbols, patterns, synchronicities, messages from past on loved ones, messages from ancestors. Um, Sometimes we don't want to believe those things, even though it's showing up in the same uh, context over and over again. Um, and investigate why those things are similar. Do a freaking Google search, see which comes up. Um, Also very grounded, also very conductive. Keep this in mind with this Leo Mars and this Venus Capricorn, as much as, and this opposition to the Sun in Scorpio, as much as this wants to be, uh, as much as that energy wants to be silencing or thinks you need to move faster, stronger, harder to get certain things done, this Page of Swords knows better. This Page of Swords knows that rushing ultimately leads to more mistakes, that taking a breath before reacting is important, so as not to be, so as not to say anything they would regret, I suppose, or do something unbecoming. It's very much tuning into frequency. Things grow very wonderfully around that. Um, it it feeds growth. I mean, it's part of the pattern as well. There's resistance to the spirit when we're being shit on constantly. It actually releases more cortisol and overclocks your nervous system in a way that ultimately leads to burnout. Stress is also contagious, really. There's something about the chemical in your sweat that's that'll affect other people's chemical system. Fun fact, research it, Google it. The Six of Swords, Three of Cups, the Six of Cups. I think the superficial of this is like protect your energy, but I don't think that's necessarily it. I think this is more so protecting a cause, protecting your passion, and that can look a lot like wearing your heart on your sleeve, which feels kind of antithetical, right? It's kind of putting yourself out there because you believe in ABC. It's putting yourself out there because you have a dream, ultimately. Um, the Three of Cups, I think, absolutely lends to that cleansing bit that I talked about. And the lymph node thing, even all of these waves and beautiful bodies of water, part of her body, and part of her toroidal vortex with her hair. It is something that grows. It is something that's up in octave. It is something that is prosperous or level up or level down if we hold on to this baggage and move with Chiron, just saying. Or if we take this as protect your energy rather than protect your purpose or protect your passion. And to move with those things. I think that is very much how I interpret protecting family. I think the most feminine thing you can do is create, and the most masculine thing you can do is honor and protect that creation. And that is something that I see more in artists than I see in people who claim to have those roles in a familial context. Fight me. The Six of Cups is also a prosperous stability, which is Venus and Capricorn, this Leo and Mars, all the things that I talked about earlier. Prosperous stability. And again, when I talked about, dealing with all of this lymph nodes and this water and this, information and coagulation, this is what I mean about the like molecules consolidating. It's similar items, snapped, crystallized. It's what makes a crystal. It's what creates reality, really. But like very much, it makes me think the inside of a crystal and that matrices, and the ways in which we establish that for ourselves. We've kind of created this own little puzzle within our system of data and what have you. What does that look like? What does that pattern look like? I have seen mine before. I've seen mine on a couple of occasions. I don't have the time for that kind of story time right now, but perhaps if there's an interest, I will share that story, those stories. It's calm, it's aligned, it's aware, it's balanced, it's grounded, the frame is even comforting. Like, even the frame of this character is comforting to me because I know what it's like when my ribs hit, like rest on my thighs, or like in general the ways that your body can kind of support itself, in this beautiful golden ratio kind of way. Okay, we pull numbers. It gives us something a little bit more finite. The Six of Swords, I'm getting has also turned its back on passion before. Whether that be maybe in a literal sense turning your back on somebody you loved, or giving up on yourself in a macro sense, or giving up on a dream, or putting a hobby away and letting it collect dust. What are those things? Why have we not touched them? And why not? 100%, I can admit to this when there's paintings that I've let go for too long. then there's a day where I'm like, why haven't I touched you? You're taunting me. And then I realized that I'm just afraid of fucking up something that I actually started to enjoy. And go through these motions of like, you have nothing to prove. You just owe it to this entity trying to crawl through the canvas. You know, you just have to honor this feeling. And it's not about the fear of, I don't know, dishonoring skill. And then you have a lot more fun again. Which is, again, a clearing away of patterns that build up over time. Like dust. How do we move? Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. My joints feel tingly. And I just kind of got like this rush, right? And I can feel that sort of shifting and moving throughout. So I feel like that's like a light controlled release of a dam, a light controlled release of, hidden information within you, repressed trauma, repressed feelings, da 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 da. Granted, that will come in many levels for many different people. But I think at the end of the day, there will be that sense of calm and relief that this was finally done. And that I think ultimately is always much scarier and much harder in thought than it is in action. Oftentimes we find ourselves, thankful and wishing we would have done it sooner when we thought it was going to be, miserable and excruciating. That's often what I say about my tongue split, actually, is that it was ridiculously painful. But as soon as it was done, I could not fathom why I didn't just do it sooner. Because I was, very stoked. Ooh. Bottom of the deck, options, possibilities, tasks. The joy of window shopping. I feel like that's making an adventure out of even the smallest tasks. And what I had said earlier about like clearing dust and what have you. Perhaps that's going through things. Perhaps that there's the lymph node drainage, right? But there's also the cleansing of your own space, and how that influences you. There's also indicators around you, that sort of keep you in alignment. I think that's ultimately the fascination with plants. I can tell when I'm not drinking enough water, when I see they're thirsty. I can tell that I'm maybe stressing myself out quite a bit. I'm not stressing myself out. But I can tell that I'm, dealing with stress when I also kind of recognize it in them, in these little guys. And I really like this light too, actually. It makes me feel like a plant. Dot, 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 dot. It's your own man in the high castle. What are the possibilities? What are the new styles? What are the accents? What are the adornments? I don't want to say accessories. The adornments. They are amulets. They're symbols. They're power symbols. I've never tattooed a sigil on my body that didn't manifest. I've never worn a beautiful gifted or found piece of jewelry and not had it be magnetic. So what ways do we dress ourselves? And in what ways are we afraid of dressing ourselves? For fear of being seen, which is where the Six of Swords, I think, ultimately is in wanting to protect. That also leads to like a fear of being seen and the anxiety of that. Trust me, I relate, but here we are. Seven of Spades, inverted, Jack of Diamonds, Three of Spades. The Three of Spades, very much running toward a passion, but it is not on the outside. It is not another opportunity or get rich quick scheme. Don't get conned. It is, in fact, within you, or a talent, or a passion, or a purpose, or a cause, or an origin story, you know, that ultimately will drive you forward. So, you know, scroll past all of those get rich quick schemes, because your willingness to learn will always offer you exactly the tools that you need to do whatever you need to do. Your willingness to learn and your willingness to trust yourself, which I think are two tenets of like ultimate mastery, I suppose, in the way that people use it. People that would consider a master is very skilled in what they do, but is also like constantly investigating and learning, which is why they ultimately create this world of affinity to this topic around them. And that's very much the Page of Swords nature and conductivity, actually. Funny how those come together to spell space and time. Jack of Diamonds, don't get distracted. Again, don't scroll past those fucking get rich quick schemes. Trust yourself, the resources you have, especially in a world that is fearful of a depression. Trust the resources that you have, because those will only exponentially grow. If you start to cultivate resources that you've never had, or that you don't understand, or that you just are being led to, you won't necessarily know what to do with it. It's like starting a hydroponic system with no knowledge. Alright. Channel that interconnectivity, man. Get real aligned, get real clean of the spirit. Of your molecular memory, really. So that you can move forward in the most stable and grounded way, and begin to notice the progress of the patterns that you've cultivated all along. Absolutely. Pat yourself on the back for those. Smile about it. Enjoy it. Look yourself in the eye and remind yourself that you've come this far. But also that this isn't the end either. So you can turn the page and you won't forget who you've been. You've come far too far for that. I don't know. What else? Shout out opposition Scorpio. I feel like that should be my Twitch handle or something. Anyway, happy full moon. I hope this is relevant, is relatable, is clarifying, is validating, and brings you some inspiration to move with. Until next time, I'll see you again. And hasta luego. Party.